Well, hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Purposeful Marketing Podcast. Aaron, Mary, and James here. And what we're going to do is have another discussion because we love them so much. On the Purposeful Marketing Podcast, we bring guests on, like we have today, Trinity, and we ask them great questions because what you do is get great answers. So we're going to continue that trajectory. And what we love most is to ask those really big questions, because when you ask those big questions, we can take the time to tear them apart, deconstruct them. And through that, hopefully we learn something new, interesting, truthful, maybe something fun. We'll see where this goes. So before I ask the big question, I really just want to give Trinity just a couple of seconds, introduce yourself, tell us something nice, maybe tell us something you love. I'll give you the floor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trinity Nguyen. I am VP of Marketing at UserGems, which is a software for sales and marketers. What do I love? I love Saturdays, sunny Saturdays by the water. So you always find me usually every Sunday in some kind of next to some kind of body of water, by the pier, by the ocean, something like that.
That's beautiful. One of the questions I normally just ask people is what's your perfect Sunday? You kind of already answered it, but it's by the water. That sounds like a lovely, lovely day. So listeners, on today's episode, really the topic is pipeline. But what I really want to break down is this idea that's coming directly from Trinity and UserGems is what causes pipeline anxiety? Ugh. It gives me the ick even just asking it, right? So we're going to really break that down. I think another way to think about this is maybe you can get out of pipeline anxiety if you're more intentional with your marketing motion and then more intentional with your revenue team. So I like that idea too. So really to start us off, this is Trinity, I'm going to pull you back in, is pipeline anxiety. Why is UserGems really talking about that? Why is that on top of mind?
I'm trying to kind of go back. I'm trying to remember when we rolled out this headline. I think we had something in the past for our headline that was more descriptive because people were telling us that they want to know what we do. So be descriptive, don't use B2B jargon. So we're trying to do that. But I think what we learned also, yes, be descriptive. Don't use jargon and buzzwords, but people still react to things like emotion. So I think we brainstorm on our Slack and we're just having fun, kind of like you all here as well, and just throwing out different words of trying to describe what is this that we're trying to solve. And the one that landed was kiss your pipeline anxiety goodbye. And we're yeah, we feel it. Everyone felt it the moment that showed up on our chat. So we're let's use it. And we put it on the homepage. And since then, everyone's been commenting on it. I think at least 18 months now. I guess we're lucky to, if you combine with what's going on in the market in the last, 18 months, then everyone really feel this. This is not the 2021 selling SaaS anymore. So I think that resonates super well with our target audience.
Yeah, and I think we have some of your target audiences on the show right now. So Mary, I know you're not head of marketing because you've transitioned roles. But however, I think you were feeling this. Do you want to kind of speak anecdotally about pipeline anxiety?
Oh yeah, for sure. As soon as you said pipeline anxiety, I felt my cortisol levels rise. I was oh my God, right? what target did I miss and when did I miss it? But that's just, yeah, it's so relevant. But Trinity, I would love to hear a little bit about how you guys did you guys do any customer research ahead of your brainstorming session? What did you do to prep for that? Because we, Aaron, James, and I, formerly in another life, all worked together at a company called Gorilla 76. And those were my favorite sessions. We're just let's do some big positioning or content strategy brainstorm session, just idea dump on everyone. So I'd love to hear how you prepped for it and what it was like.
I wish I had a smart answer where we strategize this and structure and timeline. It wasn't. So what we did in a series of different things that kind of led to this tagline. So we did use winter with a Y to test our web, a homepage or product pages, because we just wanted to check ourselves, because as marketer, my background's in product marketing, always been in B2B. So the tendency to use things like synergy, efficiency, all that stuff.
Optimize,
leverage.
My least favorite.
So I really want to make sure that people understand what we're trying to communicate. So understandability, I think it's the number one. So we use that, and that's where we got the feedback that people want to see things spelled out, even as long paragraphs. It's okay, but just be specific of what you're selling and what you do instead of all of these B2B jargons. So that was step one. Step two is like afterward, we also like interviewed, we do quarterly win-loss interviews for the last like 5 quarters now, like every quarter, just to kind of see what people trying to do with UserGems or what were they looking for when they talk to us. So all of that information shared across the team and the company and the leadership team. So that's give that foundational understanding of what is the use case. And then the last piece is when we just kind of like spitball and play around with how to make this fun. How do we talk about this? How to make it humor? And then it turned out to be like cortisol raising tagline. But it lands really well.
It does, yeah. Did you guys just have the marketing team involved in that brainstorming session, or did you bring in any other people from other departments?
So the brainstorming one, that specific one, only just the marketing team. We just spitballing on our Slack. But our team also listened to Gong calls a lot.
Nice.
So like usually on Friday, I would just kind of passive listen to it and see what people talk about. But no one would go onto a sales call and say, I have a pipeline anxiety. I think that's just something that you pick up. Usually marketers pick up these kind of like EQ signals and put a name to it.
For sure. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll linger on that a little bit because I think when I think of anxiety, it's this uneasiness about the future, right? I just don't know what's I have no control over it. I think when we think about marketers and we think about pipeline as the goal, oh my goodness, I feel that, right? I'm like, do I really have control over this? I have no idea. That's giving me so much anxiety. And I think the answer to it is being more intentional, being more focused. Really, these things we should do in any activity in our life, right? It's like, that's what you can do with pipeline as well. Just any thoughts or rebuttal to that, or just thinking what I'm saying, Trinity?
I mean, that's best practice. Be intentional in what you're doing. Spray and pray is kind of like gone now. I know everyone say that every year there's a new thing that's dead, but I really think like spray and pray is really dead now. In case you miss it, like Google and Yahoo is like shutting down email domains by February 1st. If you have 0.3% of like spam report rate or something like that. So like it's really, this one is gonna, this one's dead. So how do you be more intentional, trying to be more thoughtful in what program you're running, and work with your like sales team, CS team to make sure that everything you bring in top of the funnel can convert and don't churn. So like all these things are good things, right? I mean, it sounds good, but in reality, it's like the pipeline number is also gonna keep going up. So the anxieties are always there. So being intentional helps with some of that, but I think it's part of the job.
Yeah, and I think why that sticks out to me, and Mary, I'll let you respond in a second, is I believe, I know a lot of other marketers believe that the go-to-market motion is a team sport, right? It takes all of us, right? So pipeline is a goal and measurement that takes all of us. And the intention is something that takes all of us. So I think that's just something as marketers, like if you're struggling with this, like you're not alone. We all feel the same way of like, it takes all of us. How can we help each other do better? Mary, you're going to ask a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of like a two-part question, like kind of building on the anxiety feeling a little bit. And then Trinity, is that like kind of why you were brought on to UserGems, was like to bring in product marketing, to kind of refresh this messaging, maybe do some positioning? So again, just like those really basic product marketing fundamentals.
Sort of. So I joined UserGems 4.5 years ago.
Nice.
Was the first business hire. So they had, we had 2 founders and 2 founding engineers, and I was the first one. They had a web page, but it was challenging. It was a little bit, and I was like, hey, you guys really need help here. Let me just help you with the website. And then we go from then that's just kind of like the rest is history, and trying to figure out product marketing, like who are we selling to? What is our ICP? Who's our target persona? Because the product is pretty horizontal. So how do you communicate to all the persona? And then what else? How do you communicate the benefits? Yeah.
Definitely.
Something I'd love to linger on for Mary is, I don't know if you caught that, but Trinity has worked at the same place for 4 years. She, maybe one path to success is not moving, every 8 months.
Oh man, burn.
Yeah, there will be a follow-up episode about that. We can talk through it.
Oh my god.
No,
I mean,
that's
like
awesome.
you can see both sides. I mean, I see pros and cons on both sides. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
It's like so like the anxiety too, like as a marketer in a past life, like before you came on to UserGems, was that like a big part of like why you joined this product too? Was like you saw the potential there?
Yes, my previous employer was one of the first customers of UserGems.
Nice.
So I saw the reporting. I saw that it contributes like 10% of our monthly pipeline. And that's where that's our board deck that my VP of marketing presented. So I'm like, it works. There is a product market fit. And then I saw the horrendous website. So let me help.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that story. I think that's such a key part of like being successful in a company is like getting excited about the product and then the people. I think those are like two of the biggest draws to any company, especially for a marketer.
Yeah. And I like for us, like our entire team's using UserGems internally. I
Nice.
promise I'm not a salesperson, so I'm not trying to like sell anyone here. But there's a reason why my nail polish is UserGems color. No, if right now, like every time I report to the board, there's a line. Everyone always asks, like, where's your pipeline coming from? And there's a line that's like 12 to 16%. I'm like, thank God. And then the entire ADR, like we have ADR within marketing team, so account development reps. And whenever they get their own UserGems leads, they're like, thank God that one saved me this month. So it's just internally, like we believe in it. It's just whenever we tell anyone, they're like, oh, you're trying to sell the product. Like, no, really. Ask anybody. They'll tell you. So it helps a lot.
That's awesome.
On this episode, I think what's funny is I'm a lot more focused because normally I have Lucia on the call watching my daughter. I'm like, I have all these questions. So a question I really want to take us to is specifically, I think UserGems is doing something unique. And maybe Trinity, you can talk through that a little bit about monitoring job changes. And then I want to kind of tie that to mindsets a little bit. So if you maybe give us 3 minutes about like how UserGems works to monitor job changes.
Yeah. I think at a very high level, like a simple way of explaining it is we monitor job changes of your customers, buyers, users. So like we integrate into your CRM and kind of monitor where they go. If they change their job, get promotion. If they land at your ICP accounts, then we take care of all the routing and everything in your CRM and then bubble the leads up in the right email sequences or campaigns, etc. So the beginning to end. But at high level, it's just track your contacts for job changes. But how to operationalize it across an entire revenue team is really interesting. And once you start doing it, so like if it's a new account, then you flag the SDRs. If it's an open off, then you flag the AE. And if it's a customer account that they're leaving, you flag the CSM for churn risk. So it's a fun use case that people usually don't wake up thinking about. It's like, it just leads. Like, no, it's more than that. And once you implement it, the whole entire team really benefits.
Thank you for explaining that, because I think this is how I'm tied to mindset, if you follow me here, is we had this pipeline anxiety, because we had this uneasiness about the future and that we can't control these things. I think something you can control, not just as a marketer, but in sales, but also as a human, is relationships. So what your tool is allowing people to do is seeing like, oh, my relationship, I have this person, they go to another job. Great. Let me call them. Let me have a good time with them, right? I'm probably going to win that work later on. I think that's a much different way to think than be very anxious about pipeline and how I'm going to fill it. It's, okay, this tool and also my mindset is, let me just go build relationships, right? And the rest will follow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's beautiful. Like, I'm going to take this recording. I'm going to blast it everywhere. Everyone listen to Aaron. No, exactly it. Like we as marketers spend so much effort and spend just to bring people in, engage with them, nurture with them, and then they become customer. We spend some more in customer marketing. We build community. We do CAP. We do everything, right? And then the moment they gone, it's kind of like we treat them as like cold new leads, spend all that. Why don't you continue that? You already spent so much money there. And it makes sense that once you kind of like continue to nurture them as they move on, they convert faster because you don't have to re-educate them what your product does. But yeah, it kind of creates your own flywheel, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting with UserGems, and again, what your POV here is, I don't think there's one way to tackle pipeline, but you have a unique way and you're committing to it. And I think for like James and myself, where really James's clients is industrial manufacturing, mine are in technical professional services. So we don't really work with SaaS that much. There's got to be different ways to tackle pipeline anxiety and doing different things. But I do think what you're doing at UserGems could apply to our industries as well. But the question I want to ask, and maybe Mary or Trinity, if you want to tackle this, is kind of like as a marketer, what skill set do you need to really evaluate pipeline? Is that part of the challenge? Is Trinity saying with UserGems, we're going to think about a mindset and we're going to do it differently? Are we focusing on the wrong things in marketing with pipeline? It's kind of more of an open, broad question.
I'll let Mary go first. It's a hard question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you do a big shift in like a go-to-market, so I'll use Map My Customers as an example because I've talked about this at length on LinkedIn and podcasts and stuff. And Trinity, it sounds like you guys kind of shifted to spray and pray, right? We're saying it's dying, it's not working as much anymore. That's almost exactly what we were doing at Map My Customers before I came on, was just a complete spray and pray, both phone call and email. And so the pipeline numbers looked great because you create an opportunity, you call this guy and he's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll send out a demo and I have, 50 reps. Okay, that equals X amount in pipeline. So our pipeline numbers looked amazing. But then when you follow that pipeline down the funnel, you see it's like converting at average of like 2%, which is like horribly inefficient, right? Which is a lot of the reason why they brought me on. So to like answer your question broadly, Aaron, for sure, you have to look at the pipeline quality. And I think where there's like two ways you can do it, depending on like how advanced your CRM setup is like you can look at it by stages. So the easiest way we found out these the pipeline value really wasn't there is they would never move past stage 1, right? They'd land in stage 1, they never moved to stage 2. We had 5 stages altogether, ending in closed won or closed lost. So that's a really easy way to do it. So just kind of like reverse engineering the entire process. So like you as a marketer, if you have or are suffering with pipeline anxiety, like looking at those pipeline conversion stages is like a really great place to start, because then you can reverse engineer that buyer's journey. So I'll use like a really specific example. If you have like a bunch of customers stuck in stage 3, which is consensus. And consensus is where like you're bringing in stakeholders, you're trying to get buy-in internally, you're really trying to give your champion inside the organization all the content and tools that they need to sell the product internally. So it's like really difficult from a sales perspective to know what each of those stakeholders needs. So like you as a marketer, you're coming in here and you're like, okay, let's reverse engineer this. This person's getting stuck. How can I help? Like, who are these stakeholders that we keep getting stuck with? For us, because we were a CRM, it was often IT, because IT is in charge of integrations and like approving major software purchases. And not surprising, I'm sure, to anyone listening to this, IT isn't exactly the fastest moving department either. They're not very quick to make a lot of decisions. So that's where we found we were suffering the most with this like pause in the pipeline, like a bottleneck in the pipeline. So we just like hammered hard any like objections that IT would have to our CRM software. So like integrations, what's the setup like? What kind of documentation do they need to see on like open APIs and stuff like that? So I think that's like really low hanging fruit. Like if you have this pipeline anxiety and you're already using something like UserGems, of course, that's like a really good way to like kind of reverse engineer that process as a marketer.
Yeah. I think like probably like to highlight, double down on what Mary just said. As a marketer, think all the way. When you think about funnel, I find it's really interesting that a lot of marketers think about, when I say funnel, like bottom of the funnel, a lot of marketers think about the marketing funnel. Like bottom is like when it becomes a call. I'm like, no. When I say bottom of the funnel, I mean like bottom, when the DocuSign is sent. Like follow the money. So agree with Mary. Like the number one thing is, as any marketer in B2B, think all the way to the end. And if you are like advanced level, bow tie it. Think about post-sale. What's going on after that? But it's not just the marketing funnel. I think that's number one skill set. The second one is have the product marketing understanding about your market. So again, like what is your ICP account? Like the criteria for the ideal customer profile? And then who are your target persona? Like really understand that piece. Well, it sounds so cliche, but a lot of like demand gen marketers that I've worked with or talked to, when they first join, the first person they ask is like, give me do you know like what is our ICP, our persona? Do we have a product marketer? Well, if there's none, you have to wear that skill, like that hat, learn that skill set, because then you can have a really intelligent conversation when you analyze a funnel. Like Mary, you just said, you can like segment it, like for non-ICP demo requests, what happened to them? Did they convert? The ICP one, did they convert? And with that kind of fundamental understanding of your market, that's when you can make really intelligent conversation with your sales partners. Because otherwise, the flip end is the sales always going to ask, I want more volume. Sure, but what's wrong with the current volume? Is it quality or not?
Mhm.
Is it just anecdote, or is it actually something's wrong with how we targeting the marketing side?
I appreciate you both tackling that broad question, but I think what it does is reinforce that mindset is if you're more intentional in what you're doing, no matter if it's pipeline, marketing, being a human being, you're probably going to get to the answer faster and better.
Mhm.
Question I had for James, this is the part where Aaron and James are philosophy majors, so we do our own segment here, is James, do you even have anxiety about anything? I'm just very curious. What's your mindset on that?
I mean, yeah, sure. None of it has to do with work, really. I guess, where my head goes in all of this, and we've talked about this before, I feel like the season 1 of the Purposeful Marketing podcast was really the three of us talking about, should marketing own a number, and what should that number be? That was a lot of like what we were talking about, and how do you handle that? And I don't know. I think my point of view has really become like, well, you should do everything in your power to not have numbers owned by one function in a team. It's a team sport, like we were saying before, and it's the reason small companies can make such good, quick, powerful decisions and do really impactful, simple things right, is because they haven't segmented off in this way. But presumably, like, a lot of the companies using UserGems are not small companies. And I think that, so I guess the question that I would have for Trinity then is like, should marketing own a number? And what number should that be? Because the second part of it is, marketing wants to own a number so they get a seat at the table. They're like, oh, I'll get invited, I'll be on the board, or I'll be in the C-suite if I own a number. If I don't, then there's no reason for me to be there and I'm out of the conversation. But UserGems is a tool for marketing and sales. Hopefully at UserGems, they already understand that marketing should have a seat at the table. So I guess, does marketing own a number?
Yeah.
And what number is that? And how do you handle that?
Yeah, for sure. It works for us, might not work for other companies. I'm going to just preface it. But I do think if you want to have a seat at the table, at the board meeting, you do have to own a number. And everyone wants to get the seat at the table, but not a lot of people want to own a number because, well, I don't influence everything. Well, but if you want to have a seat at the table, you have to figure out how to influence the number. So on my end, I am tied to the revenue number. My head of demand is tied to the pipeline, which is the sales accepted pipe. But his mindset is always at the revenue number as well. I'm trying to get us to the stage where things more predictable. After hopefully next year, things are more predictable. I want to also look into the churn side as well to make sure that we look at the bow tie and not just the funnel. So on my end, I think to align with the rest of your go-to-market team, you need to own at least a number that your CEO reports to the board, and AKA that's a revenue, AKA that's a retention number or expansion number. And that helps too, like when you have conflicts, which you should have in any kind of a go-to-market meetings, right? Like conflicts are okay. But if your sales partner or CS partners know that you have the same goal in mind, then it doesn't matter if like things get heated. They know that your heart's in the right place. You're just trying to get to it in a different route. So at least there's a benefit there versus this age-old conflict of, oh, you just give me like shitty leads. No one touching marketing leads at all. Like, it's just so old. So can we try to fix it? It works for us because, like James said, we small. So we started this out like 4 years ago, the same mindset. So most of our pipeline came from account-based program. So the ADR, the marketing engine kind of go after the same accounts together. So that's in our DNA. But I know for a large organization where it's going to take a little bit to change that mindset.
Yeah. And the main reason I ask is because, and I think that answer makes a lot of sense, that I don't see any flaw in that structure. But the reason I ask it is partly because it seems like people end up having anxiety about one number, like one in particular, when the journey from like has never heard of your company to is an ambassador for your company involves showing up in a lot of different places, in a lot of different numbers at some point in that process. And and we see it, I've seen it with clients of ours, and I've seen it with folks that we've brought onto the show, and it tends to be like they're stressing out over one thing. And there's this amount that I think what you lose as the team grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, and you've got a director of demand, you've got three different like VPs of sales that are in different parts of the sale, and you've got all this stuff. It's just like a bunch of people that are stressing out about one particular number instead of a group of people that are working towards like what you said, which is like revenue. The thing that's really keeping us all in our job, no matter how well any of those individual numbers are, is probably going to be revenue for most organizations. So it's like the more people that are swimming at that number, that care about that number, then we can have all kinds of open, honest conversations, like you said, about like, well, how can we get that number higher? Like, what is maybe we're lagging here, but we're doing really well here. Okay, so what is that telling us? And how can we make a decision that actually just gets us to the revenue number? Maybe we shouldn't be so worried about this one, smaller detail, like lead volume.
Yeah, but I think that depends on the legacies, like KPI of the company, right? So I don't want to blame like anyone that's like, I feel like a lot of marketers and salespeople, they have the right mindset, but depends on the environment you're in. You're kind of swimming against the current and you pick the battles you want to fight. And hopefully eventually you are able to change the company's mindset. But it is hard when you're kind of in the environment where the first day you join is like, I need to get this lead volume up. Here's your lead volume now number. Go forth. I'm like, wait, how about the revenue? Like someone else take care of it. You just take care of this piece, okay? So if that kind of conversation you have, then it's a little bit harder. So I could see it. But hopefully more and more people will start thinking this way, being more intentional and rally. It's a team sport.
Yeah, I think if you can take anything out of the show, it's being intentional. A phrase I normally use is the problem didn't happen to you intentionally, but the solution could be had with intention, right? So like that idea is there's just so much that can impact us as marketers, as sales, as human beings in a business that sometimes it's okay. Take a step back and say, anxiety be gone. What I can do is try to own a number. I can try to, thank you for reiterating season 1, but season 2 was POV. I feel like that's where we really landed on is like, you have to have a POV either on how you work or your narrative as a company. You just have to have POV on something. So I think that's another way to tackle it. This third way I've been really thinking about a lot, essentially like asking these 3 questions, because what happens to you in marketing and sales is you have so many things thrown at you that you're losing track of the number. You don't even know the number it's, right? I'm being asked to go write outreach emails. If I'm in sales, I'm being asked to like go in the field and drive into this like manufacturing plant that I've never been to. There's so much going on. But I think how you can get there is if you ask yourself these 3 questions. It's what business objective does this support? And it could be anything. I could be doing a deliverable. I could be talking to someone. I could be planning something. It's who are the key stakeholders and why? And then the last one is this financially feasible for the business? I think that's one I've been thinking more as a marketer because our mindset is just, we don't have to think about it that way. But I think as we all grow in our careers, it's like, we got to think that way, right? Is this is a great idea. This is the right stakeholder, but is this actually feasible? Can we actually do this? We're thinking about the bottom line, right? It's like, how does this impact the bottom line of our business if we choose this or do this deliverable or talk to this person?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
It's really true. I was gonna say the same thing too, like in terms of like objective, how do you tie whatever you do, whatever your team, like layers beneath you, like how do you tie that to the company objective? So we're lucky that we have, so our CEO came from Google and our VP of Ops came from HubSpot. So like we implement objective key result OKR pretty early on, I think like also like a year and a half ago. And every quarter we refresh it and we share with the entire company. We update it every Monday and the company syncs like where things are at. So it's very easy for the team to know the focus for them this quarter, how does it tie into the company OKR? It's like a direct line. They could see it and they see who else is in their pod that they need to collaborate with for that key result. So I think like for large organizations, it's going to be a little bit trickier, but essentially if you do OKR and kind of maintain that, it will give the visibility and transparency to your staff so they know why they're doing what. Like, why do I write this outreach email? Why does this reply rate matter to the business? So I think that's one thing. And on the like, is it financially feasible for business? So because of the focus on efficiency in the last like 2 years, so I feel like a lot of marketers now measuring their efficiency from the program. So like when I report to the board, I also measure like how is our efficiency? Like if I spend $1 in marketing, how much dollars in pipeline I generate? From the just program standpoint. And if I add in the marketing headcounts, what is that efficiency? And if I add in the ADR headcount, what is that efficiency? And we monitor it quarter and over quarter. So that helps us also kind of see how much money we could spend for any kind of experiment to maintain the efficiency that we need to grow as a healthy business.
I think, and thank you for walking through that, because I think for some of our listeners, I do want to mention, because the challenge is there's stuff in SaaS that works, like you just explained, that works. If you're in industrial manufacturing, if you're in technical professional services, your challenge is like, you don't even have pipeline. It's on a spreadsheet somewhere, right? So like you can't even do these things. So normally we try to talk through that all. And I think what we've done is we've really honed in on this idea of intention and being focused and kind of the why to pipeline. So I love that. The one thing I want to end on, this will be a little more broad for you, is kind of talk about tools. I think there's one specifically, UserGems. Other ways you can think about tools to help you be more intentional in pipeline is there a book you'd recommend? Is there something, before we hit record, we were just talking about how we take notes. Is there any kind of tools you kind of give the listeners to really help them be more intentional?
Books. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of good books out there. I think it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Tools right now, it's really cliche. I have ChatGPT 4 always on my, like it's actually on this screen right now. And I'm doing a lot of different, there's a busy work where I'm like, hey, I have I think in bullets, and I just give it to them and they would just write me like a really nice email, makes me sound really intelligent. But then also I'm working on like a strategic narrative. So I'm trying to play around with different frameworks. So I feel like that could be something that marketers can use to kind of play around with ideas before they commit to it. We use it a lot to also identify like different accounts or different strategy before we execute like any kind of experiments. So hopefully that helps with being intentional. But it's just low lift, low cost, really fast. So you can run through a lot of thought experiments before you commit to anything.
Perfect. That's all we need. The whole point is tools work differently for everyone, right? And those are great tools. So Trinity, appreciate you. I love the thought about strategic frameworks. You're welcome back on the show anytime after you do some of that work. You want to come teach us about what's working? Come back on the show.
Happy to. I actually would love to learn more about you guys, like on the industrial manufacturing and manufacturing side. Like, I feel like maybe like a lot of the stuff I talk about is more very SaaS centric, but I feel like there's like now a lot of SaaS companies that also like working with industrial manufacturing, financial services, like the non-tech, non-business services. So I'm kind of curious to say, what does it look like in your world?
Definitely. I think you can talk to James or myself anytime independently, but I think an important thing to think about, and my founder, Mike Greenberg, has the stat, can't remember it, but it's like out of all the B2B businesses, like SaaS is like such a small percentage. And there's all these marketers really being challenged with the same thing SaaS marketers are being challenged with, but they don't have the tools, they don't have the skill set, the mindset, the resources. I think that's why we wanted to do this show, so I can help people. Like at the end of the day, that's really all I want, is to help people. And again, you're welcome back on. Maybe we can do an episode about that. I'm like, my mind is like turning here.
I will say too, if part of this is like, well, UserGems is going to want to, like, they're going to want to they would love to get in to, I'm sure, the massive market that is, industrial B2B, especially because that thing that happens with software happens with industrial companies, where if I'm selling plastic processing equipment like extruders or what have you, the person that purchases it is probably like a process engineer. That process engineer moves to a new company. The next time their equipment goes down or they need a new line, he goes to the company that he knows. It's all driven by the staff. For the most part, there are applications where like the cost of switching out all this massive equipment is so huge. But in a lot of cases, like, this same phenomenon is true, where you might not have a return customer anymore if that process engineer leaves. You might not, and you might have a new customer on the way if that happens. So like, that visibility would be really valuable. I think the thing that would make it more difficult is in industrial, there's a lot more sales through distribution networks, for one thing. And the other thing is, when it's not through distribution networks, the relationships tend to be kind of strong without the assistance of tools, because the total customer pool is smaller.
Everyone has their own Rolodex that they can call on, right?
Exactly. And it all fits in a Rolodex. Like, you can't make 14,000 extruders in a year. You're only selling so many. So there's I think that concept translates straight over. Like, the value of being hyper aware of those things for a revenue team is definitely there. I think the challenge would be like, how do you figure out how to make it act in a way that gives the right information to the right person? Like, you'd operationalize it different if you were an industrial company, but the tool could still provide the same value.
That is so cool. Aaron, I really liked what you just said. Like, SaaS is such a small piece of the market. The loudest one, though. But like a small piece. But there are so many other like marketers in different industries. I'm trying like this. Going to next year, my goal is to get out of the SaaS bubble. Still love SaaS, but I feel like it's an echo chamber. So
for sure,
I'm so excited that you guys are not SaaS. Love SaaS though. For listeners, listening.
And we love SaaS too, Mary. We love you.
Mary. I love SaaS too, Mary.
I'll give one quick example, because James, I really appreciate you walking through that, because I think professional services, I think, could work with UserGems as well.
We have business services.
Perfect. A common occurrence would be like biotech consulting, which I work with those clients. Their clients are chief medical officers at a pharma or a drug company, and then that chief medical officer leaves to start their own startup, right? So having that tool to kind of help those biotech consultants track that, because what they're going to do is really lean on those relationships. They already work the chief medical officer, they start their own venture. Great. Now they can help them scale and flex and do the things they need to do. So I think that would be applicable as well.
That's so cool. It's like another world. Listening to that, I love this. Where do marketers in other industries, where do they go to? Is it like an event I should go to learn? This is so fascinating. I'm loving this.
Awesome. Yeah. Hopefully they come on this podcast. That would be the most important place right now. I think there should be, industrial marketing event. Mary or James, you guys want to pitch that real quick?
Yeah. Industrial Marketing Live, Trinity, just industrialmarketinglive.com. So they do like a bi-weekly. James works for Gorilla 76, who runs it, and they have a Slack community too. It's super informative. If you just like go in that Slack community and just read through some threads, like everything James and Aaron are hitting on, but like speaking super specific, now that I've been in the world of manufacturing and now SaaS, is like marketers, like nobody knows anything about CAC, LTV, lead to opportunity, lead to close. Like no one knows those numbers. No one cares about those numbers. Churn is like basically non-existent. That's not even a term anybody would use in manufacturing. And like 80% of manufacturing revenue in mid-market comes from past customers. Like just the customer coming back and buying the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is so interesting.
It's so interesting. Yeah, it's really fun, and definitely primed for a shakeup, in my opinion.
Ooh.
I love it. I'm gonna stalk you guys on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm on the page right now, so I think I might
Yeah.
just like sign up.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
think I think the episode that might be coming out next, we recorded it, but I don't know if it's live yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, with Peyton Warren. We talk
It's
about
out, yeah.
that community. That's probably like one of the next ones to drop. She would be a good person if you're interested in participating in that community. She would be the person to
I think I might pop in. I think this is
to
really
be
exciting.
speaking with.
It's like something new, like, oh, it's a
Yes.
new topic. It's something new. This is so cool. I'm a nerd, guys. This is
Awesome. Yes, we
No,
love
yeah,
we
it's-
love marketing nerds.
Yeah, we love marketing nerds, and I'm glad you're here. Trinity, last question for you. Where do you want people to find you after this episode?
I'm on LinkedIn, so that's the fastest way
Nice.
to get to me. My inbox is a nightmare, so LinkedIn is the best way to find me.
Perfect. Okay, listeners, I hope you appreciate the show. This is where you listen to podcasts. Go listen to it. We are taking guests. Best way to reach us is to DM one of us, specifically myself, and I'll get you on the show. What we've been loving recently is getting individuals to come on and really talk about a tactic or a POV or a deliverable. And then what we do is really talk about the mindset. And I think that's where we've been learning a lot. Hopefully you're learning too. So what I'll leave you with is if you're facing pipeline anxiety, I am too, you can come reach out to me and we'll get through it together because GTM, it's team sport. Appreciate y'all.
Peace.